So welcome back to Third Age Reforged and to another battle replay, and this is going to be a return to the mountain pass for a so very nearly lore-friendly battle. There's only one faction that's out of place, and I'm sure that it will become immediately apparent when we're going through the red team who that is. This one was sent to me, I believe, by Captain Gervais. Just going to check that over here. Yes, indeed, it was Captain Gervais. And obviously the mountain pass is a pretty popular map, and it has been ever since vanilla just because of all of the ways it can work out. There's a lot of pathways through the map, low ground, high ground, and this is going to have a distinctly attack defense sort of feel, almost like a siege battle really, because it is also going to be a 3v5, and I would certainly expect the army with three armies, well, the team with three armies on it, to have a very substantial quality advantage over the attackers. I would expect anyway, because it's always going to be difficult for the 3 to beat the 5, even on a map like this where you can certainly use the terrain to your advantage. But we'll go through the blue team first of all, and as I've said previously, on 0.96 I'm going to be going through the army compositions much more quickly now because I've said everything that can be said. Again, I desperately need 0.97 to come out soon so that I have some new things to talk about with regards to Reforged and the interplay between the factions and the relative balancing, because everyone's figured everything out by now and they don't need me to tell them how to play the game at this point. So we'll go through Erebor first of all. Combination of halberds, spears, crossbows, infantry. Obviously the Blacklock engineers are here on this side of the map, but this, I assume he's going to be using the very narrow choke point on this side of the map to his advantage. The Blacklock engineers could be absolutely brutal if he does choose to do that. Ironfoot warriors are in here as well. The Axeguard of Erebor. Very, very powerful. Obviously, Khazad-dûm do have the more potent infantry between the two dwarven factions in the game at the moment, but the crossbows can make a very big difference. The Blacklock engineers in particular are the real selling point of Erebor in the current patch. There's also some highborns of Erebor, and of course the General's Bodyguard going to be the Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin today, so a lot of very potent infantry, a lot of decent mainline stuff as well, all of the Ironfoot units. And this sort of map, again, the mountains, exactly the sort of place where the dwarves like to do their warfare. But we do have Arthedain as well, played by Tangerine. He's got some Grey Company hidden down here in the valley, in addition to having a unit hidden, oh no, not hidden units actually up here, just a couple of units of Arthedain pikemen. And over here he has the main bulk of his army, including a lot of, well, some Dunedain Trollslayers in there. There's a lot of Evendim spears and upgraded Arthedain pikemen up here as well, which, to be honest with you, this army is, the Evendim spears, the pikes, they're cost-effective frontline, but they're going to need a lot more quality than I'm seeing here. They've got a lot of Hobbit Slingers, the Troll Slayers are hidden, I would imagine there's Rangers as well, so a big portion of his army is going to be hidden. And over here we have the sort of heart and soul of his army with regards to his heavy infantry, including a catapult, including the Merc War Chiefs. The Dunedain Peacekeepers are in here as well, but obviously the mainstay of the Arthedain infantry force are going to be the Dismounted Knights of Anubis. Obviously multiple HP, very, very tanky indeed. And the final faction, as I'm sure you've already noted, going to be Lothlorien, played by Nubiwan, and he has got his general over here. Haldir are going to be rolling with the Galatharim nobles. Obviously this is 0.96, so they do not have their special projectiles, and they do still have the Lothlorien blades as a sort of higher tier line infantry unit available to them. There's some Lothlorien spears available here as well, so you can see the quality of the elves here in full display. Maitha Ilaz Gelen, Karas Gladhon's Guardians, by far and away the strongest unit of pikes. In the last battle we saw just how powerful they can be. Maitha Ilaz Gelen, a couple of units of Lothlorien blades down here. There's also some Sylvan Spears, so just some more basic units. I would imagine the Sylvan Rangers are hidden around here as well. You'd be mad not to bring them on this map. Ethel Tirith and Lothlorien Archers. And then down here some more heavy units, more Lothlorien Blades, Spears and Archers. No Lothlorien Axes, interestingly enough. And then finally, the final army. Well, the final army. We have the other team, the red team. The first of the evil forces going to be Fallen Morningstar, playing as Umbar. He's got some units way up here on the cliff, although they aren't going to be able to get to Lothlorien from here. I think they're going to be spending a lot of their time marching back down this hill that they've been deployed on. Castamir's Legion, Abrazanim, some Narin Aru Sentinels as well. They're probably fortunate they're out of range actually, otherwise the elves would be teeing off on them almost immediately, I would imagine. And then around here, the general going to be in a cavalry unit. The Númenórean Lancers actually, not the Warlords of Umbar. Down here, the one faction which is out of place, Khazad-dûm, are going to be marching with the forces of evil today. Walking, obviously Khazad-dûm, very, very tempting as a faction to play in 0.96.1 because of how powerful they are. It's got some Dwarven Miners, the 4th Legion Shield Guard, to my knowledge, the only spearmen in the game to not have the Malus, although maybe the Sons of the Fallen have that applied to them as well, I'm not sure. 2nd Legion Axeguard, obviously very, very potent shock infantry. Speaking of the Sons of the Fallen, here they are. There's also some Mithril Guard, the Merc Cavalry is here. Guards of Khazad-dûm with the General, very, very powerful, of course, 3 hit points on them. Merc crossbows also, and up here there's also some Orc Hunters of Khazad-dûm, and there's some more units in the trees as well, I would imagine. So the Dwarves getting ready to be the battering ram alongside another faction which is very, very good at providing a lot of brute force. Angmar, Yo Ranger 0123, a couple of units of Blackwatch Legion going to be leading the way, along with the Guardians of Kharndoom. A lot of armour, a lot of shields in and amongst this. Some Witchround Blackguard as well, and of course the Mighty Witchers. They're going to have to, well, the defenders are going to have to be on the lookout for the Witchers. Certainly Lothlorien and Arnor, though, have got all of the archers they need to kill the Witchers before they get into position, so no excuse for missing them if that is indeed what ends up happening. Some Trolls of Gundabad over here as well from Yo Ranger. There's probably going to be some hidden units, a lot of Snaga in the Angmar army, of course, which can hide. We have Isengard, played by Y2K86, upgraded Uruk-hai infantry over here, and some Uruk-hai archers, some Uruk-hai raiders. There's also some Warg riders, and some champions of the White Hand. Obviously, very, very powerful. I doubt they're going to be all that important in this fight, because there's a lot of pikes from Arthedain, and very choke point heavy fight this. Although the Isengard ballista could be very, very deadly. Uruk-hai pikemen as well, and of course the mighty Trolls of the White Hand. And then further forward deployed, we have the Orcs of the Misty Mountains going after the Dwarves, so they're natural enemies. A lot of heavy goblins, infantry, archers. I would imagine there's probably some spears as well. Doesn't look like it, actually, interestingly enough. There are the crossbows at the very least, though. Black Uruks of the Mountains, Blackback Mountain Berserkers, some Cave Trolls, and some White Uruk Fearmongers. We'll see how this goes. I will make a little cut, though, because I imagine Erebor are going to retreat behind the choke point pretty quickly, and it's going to take the red team quite a while to march into place. Obviously, 62,000 frames on this one, I would imagine. There's a pretty lengthy setup phase. So yeah, I will rejoin when the battle begins. So interestingly enough, no, Erebor are not going to retreat behind the choke point, which I must say surprises me somewhat, because I'm sure that Erebor, with all their quality here, will be able to deal relatively easily with this single Misty Mountains army, but the real problem may come if Isengard decide to join the Misty Mountains. 2 armies is a much different proposition than 1. The Misty Mountains do have some decent tools here as well. The White Uruk Fearmongers with their AP, the Cave Trolls with their ability to shut down the crossbows, and of course the Misty Mountains have their own crossbowmen, which will be very effective against the Dwarves. But in the infantry engagement, it's going to be a very one-sided affair. The heavy goblin infantry is going to bounce off the Erebor front line. There's some Erebor legionaries moving around the flank there. The Ironfoot front line getting into position, the Ironfoot pikes and spears providing all that mass, so it's not as if the goblins are going to be able to push through the lines either. Heavy goblin infantry moving forward, obviously very, very low in terms of quality, especially in comparison to the rest of the men on display here, or dwarves and goblins I should say. The Ironfoot crossbowmen and I think the Blacklock engineers there. I saw the thicker projectiles shooting into this blob over here. The White Uruk Fearmongers will be a very good target to go after. The frame rate chugging a little bit as these large armies clash together. The Ironfoot warriors and the Axeguard of Erebor fighting as one. The Cave Trolls also not being used to their full effectiveness here. The Cave Trolls are much better as line breakers. When they get caught in a fight like this, they are less effective than pretty much all other trolls, unless you're talking about the Troll Catapult or the Troll Drummers. But the Dwarves have got the Trolls right where they want them. Halberds are coming in here as well, some Goblin Infantry trying to come forward. You can see actually that the Dwarves are going to be very happy with this engagement. It looks a little bit dicey because there's a lot of Goblins crashing down on their line, but you can see already some of them are shaken. Defeat seems certain for the entirety of the Goblin front line, and the very solid Dwarven force holding the line. But you can also see on the mini-map there in the background, Isengard are going to be moving into position to try and reinforce, although I'm not sure how much left of the Misty Mountains army there's going to be. You can see there's some javelins being thrown into the lines, the Snaga skirmishers doing their bit. There's actually some Trolls of Gundabad from Angmar on the way over here as well, so the crossbows are trying to shoot. They don't have the best of shots, although to be fair, the hill is actually helping them here, so they do have a clearer shot than they otherwise would. It's not completely flat terrain. Ironfoot axe throwers also throwing their payload in, and they're obviously very easily able to shoot over the ranks of their own men into the taller Black Uruks and Goblins. Blacklock Engineers. This is almost certainly why the frame rate is chugging, because the Blacklock Engineers are shooting right into the guts of the Misty Mountains army. And obviously they're going to be doing horrendous damage in conjunction with those Ironfoot crossbows as well. Still a fairly decent amount of the Misty Mountains army left to go, however. The last Legion Kataz Dul firing in. The Blacklock Engineers are taking fire, but the Erebor Legionaries are actually right in behind here. This unit is going to die off, but they are preventing the heavy Goblin crossbowmen from firing, which are really the mainstay here of the Misty Mountains assault, although another unit of crossbows is shooting them in the back. This unit of Erebor Legionaries is not long for this world, unfortunately, especially not now that Isengard's Wargs are on station. But you can see here The Goblins are just breaking from the front line. The entire Goblin army is just falling to pieces here. They have made a, they will have done some damage to the Erebor front line, but certainly this has been a very positive engagement for the Dwarves so far. But now here comes the problem. Will they be able to withstand another army? Isengard are moving forward. Isengard have got a little bit more quality to them than the armies that have come forward so far, and also their black blocks have just been charged here by this unit of Warg Riders. Now these Ironfoot Crossmen need to retarget and shoot into the Warg Riders. They need to save the Black Block Engineers because they are such an important unit. Now they probably have a ton of kills already, to be fair. They probably already more than paid for themselves, but it's a 3v5. Paying for yourself is not good enough. You need to do more than that. These Trolls of Gundabad managed to get in behind the lines, but they're also now being killed off as well. Obviously Dwarven units can look after themselves in melee, even if they're skirmishers. Looks as though Erebor are trying to sort of reform a line. The Black Block Engineers are actually going to be able to get away as the Warg Riders have to cycle out. The Dwarven Infantry was coming in to reinforce. Some Misty Mountains units are still alive. The Blackback Berserkers were in the middle, and there is still a single unit of Black Uruks holding the line where the Heavy Goblins could not. And of course there are the Skirmishers as well. So while this has been a victory so far for the blue team, there's still a lot more fighting left to do. And especially now that Isengard are coming forward, Isengard are a much more professional outfit than the Misty Mountains. The Uruk-hai infantry much stronger than Heavy Goblin infantry. So it's not going to be quite the same proposition here. Although the Misty Mountains general did die, the rest of the Blackback Berserkers finally falling by the wayside. The Snaga Skirmishers pouring forward, trying perhaps to engage the Ironfoot Crossmen. Maybe a bit of a messy retreat. Let's have a look over here and see what's happening. Down here on the lower ground, the Snaga Archers of Yo Ranger and Angmar moving forward. But so far, those Arthedain Pikemen moving back up to the position. The Grey Company have not yet revealed themselves, and that is certainly the right thing to do. The Barrow Wights have revealed themselves, however. Very good in .96. Angmar in general, a lot of their strength can come from the Barrow Wights and the rest of their very potent infantry force. But with all of the archers and with the position that the blue team occupy, they could be able to kill the Barrow Wights pretty quickly as long as they play their cards right. Yes, you can see the Erebor sort of fighting retreat here. I do like how Erebor sort of deployed forwards and now they're sort of retreating back to the choke point as and when they need to. As the pikes, the infantry get ready to accept the second wave of the assault. And the Trolls of the White Hand are actually leading the way here, which a little bit further ahead of the rest of their infantry force. I mean, the Uruk-hai infantry is going to get in here now, but even a unit as strong as the Trolls of the White Hand, they are one of the strongest Trolls in the game. But against Dwarven infantry, if they find themselves isolated, they could find themselves falling away pretty quickly, especially if some of the AP infantry comes forward. The Axe Guard is still there, the Black Blocks can shoot into them, of course, and the Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin are around here somewhere. But you can also hear the crossbows, the Heavy Goblin crossbows, still shooting into the Erebor front line. Fire arrows also being loosed by the Heavy Goblin archers. Snaga Skirmishers getting into position, Uruk-hai Raiders. And Isengard do have a fair amount of their lower tier units as well, Uruk-hai Archers and Raiders, which aren't going to do too well in a vacuum against individual Dwarven units, but it's a lot of pressure that the Dwarves have had to absorb so far. And now I feel as though the red team's skirmishers are really going to start to come into their own. A combination of what's left of the Misty Mountains army and all of the new reinforcements they have from Isengard. From an infantry perspective, I would still give the advantage to Erebor, but unfortunately for them, this is not what the Orcs are focused on, as the Dwarves come forward trying to finish off these Black Uruks, the Ironfoot units coming in. The frame rate much healthier since the Black Block Engineers have stopped firing. Those Snaga Skirmishers, however, being targeted by the Ironfoot crossbows. I'm not sure whether the Skirmishers... I mean, they are wavering, so another volley could be enough to break them off, so it might very well prove to be worth it. But after that, I don't know, I mean, you can see here that Isengard are actually pulling back, and I feel as though the red team are cottoning on to the fact here that if they utilise their skirmishers to their fullest effect, they'll be in a very good place. But Erebor certainly, of all the blue team, the other armies from Arthedain and Lothlorien haven't seen any combat yet, whereas Erebor already taken huge losses from their army. The Ironfoot Axe Throwers and Dragon Slayers are way back there, perhaps in an effort to try and preserve the lives of their general. The Snaga Skirmishers are still alive, and you can actually see here, they are very eager to utilise their skirmishers, which is going to force Erebor to move forward. They cannot sit here and take this level of punishment, otherwise they're just going to be bled out at the wrists. Their army is going to be destroyed, but the Snaga Skirmishers are acting as a very makeshift front line here as the Ironfoot Spears charge in, skewering the front line of those Snaga, the front ranks. falling away, and that is the sign that Erebor have lost half their army. Can the dwarves carry on? I mean, to be fair, the dwarves are better than most at weathering a lot of skirmish fire, but unfortunately for them, javelins and crossbows, it's much more difficult to just sort of sit there and take it. You can see there that not too many of those Ironfoot, well, I say that, a lot of them are dying now because of the crossbow volleys that are coming in, but heavy goblin archers, Uruk-hai archers, all of these dwarven units will be relatively good actually at absorbing that pressure, but now that the Ironfoot crossbows are largely out of ammunition, you can see the dwarves are starting to move forward, and interestingly enough, the orcs are a little bit slow on the uptake there, not charging their infantry forward quickly enough, and some of the skirmishers getting engaged in melee, but now you can see the Isengard infantry, pikes and trolls all starting to come forward to engage once more. There are still Erebor legionaries, there are still Ironfoot spears though, and this is still working out pretty well, I have to say, for Erebor. I mean, they may very well end up losing this fight in the long run, but they will have taken out a huge chunk of the red team's manpower. Ironfoot halberds there, the Ironfoot warriors. Unfortunately, the trolls, the white hand are here, which is going to give the orcs more of an edge in this engagement, especially with all of the numbers that are following them in. A lot of Uruk-hai raiders and pikemen. Those Ironfoot halberds are also finding themselves the target of all of the skirmishers in the backfield. These champions of the white hand should really be cycling around and charging into the back ranks of the dwarves, because that could be absolutely devastating. Champions of the white hand are very difficult to kill off quickly as well. A few volleys from the Blacklock engineers would have a pretty big impact, but if you charge the Blacklock engineers first, that takes away the dwarves' ability to respond to that, really. Heavy goblin archers trying to get off the front line. Highborns of Erebor moving forward. Here come the Ironfoot pikes and the Blacklock engineers. And you can see there that there are the wargs. Uruk-hai archers starting to retreat from the front line as well. Highborns of Erebor charging into the middle where the line is starting to flag a little bit. You can see that with the with the Ironfoot crossbowman on the front line, that's a sign that a lot of the dwarven crossbows have sort of run dry of ammunition. And I don't know, it's a very thin dwarven front line at this point. They were able to weather the initial attack very, very nicely. And they've now essentially repositioned themselves on the same front line pretty much. The Blacklock engineers are in position again. They're in a very nice position as well, shooting into that big old blob of Uruk-hai pikemen and Uruk-hai raiders. There's a lot of potential damage they can do there, and the Isengard wargs are a little bit static. I feel as though the orcs could have actually won this fight already if the wargs had been used a little bit more aggressively. As it is, Erebor can count themselves quite fortunate that they're still in a position to fight and hold this front line. There you can see the Blacklock engineer bolts just ripping their way through this Isengard blob. The Highborns of Erebor have also really battened down the hatches here on the front line, but now the wargs are starting to move, which is bad news for Erebor because they've got nothing that can respond to this, really. They do have some Ironfoot axe throwers, I suppose, to try and stop the charge. There's some Ironfoot crossbowmen moving forward now. There goes the frames as well, as the Blacklocks loose another volley. The Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin coming into this section of the line. These Uruk-hai raiders are not going to last much longer. They're going to break, and it's actually a race against time here. Can the Isengard wargs actually recharge the dwarven front line before their infantry collapses? Here come the champions of the White Hand. They're going to be able to charge into the Ironfoot crossbowmen. The Ironfoot crossbows are not going to be able to get a volley off beforehand, so this is a good catch. Nice charge. Champions of the White Hand have got a lethal charge as well. Excuse me.
Only half the enemy force remains.
The Ironfoot axe throwers could start doing some damage as well. I would suggest the Blacklock engineers probably need to... Well, I say that. These warg riders, they're shaken. It goes to show how much the Isengard and Misty Mountains front line at this point is genuinely struggling. Those Blacklock engineers scything through the warg riders and those pikes. The warg riders are going to stop the Blacklock engineers from firing now, but they may very well break in melee with them. Meanwhile, the Ironfoot axe throwers still throwing their axes into the champions of the White Hand, who are still in melee. They need to be cycle charging, really. They need to recharge the dwarven lines, because at this point I think it's actually too late. The dwarves, their infantry has really gained the upper hand. The Highborns of Erebor and the Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin are just too strong for anything that Isengard have brought. There were no Nazkai, there were no Uruk-hai berserkers. The Blackback Mountain Berserkers were here, but they were part of a disastrous assault which the Blacklock engineers just teed off on the section of line where they were. Ironfoot axe throwers trying to do their bit. I mean, fortunately for the Isengard player, the champions of the White Hand are stronger than most other units if you leave them in melee, most other mounted units. But they're not really being used to their fullest effect. I mean, they're going to charge in now, and that will be a nice charge, which could very well end up finishing off the Blacklock Engineers, but it's too little too late. I mean, look at this. The Dwarves are just flooding forwards. A lot of routing units. The Dwarves sending their enemies broken before them. There is the Isengard Ballista, which could end up doing a decent amount of damage. I mean, with this assault, it's possible that the champions of the White Hand could pick off individual units and actually cripple this Dwarven attack as they banzai across the field. And again, the champions of the White Hand have got such a nasty charge on them that the Dwarven player now, he needs to kill the champions of the White Hand off first. He's done it. He's basically ridden his luck so far in the fact that the Isengard player has not really utilised them to their fullest effect. Now, though, he needs to. Now that they're charging in, they need to do a better job of accounting for them than this. The Highborns of Erebor, even a unit as tanky as them, taking a lot of damage from the champions. They need to do better than this, the Dwarves. They've done so well so far, but in a 3v5 like this, it's not enough to just do well for a certain period. And you can see now that the Dwarves have sort of lost their bottle a little bit. They're going to retreat now, seeing the mistakes that they've made. Heavy Goblin Archers are here in position, still shooting. Chaos has erupted over here, really, as the Dwarves, I don't really think they can make up their mind what they want to do. They want to charge forward and engage the crossbows, but they're doing a pitiful job, really, of accounting for the wargs. Not a united assault at all. Very disappointing, I have to say. The Dwarves have done so well up to now, but they're throwing away all their gains. Mistakes from the team when they're outnumbered are amplified so much more than the mistakes of the team which are essentially the attackers in this case. Always have to bear that in mind. Barrow Whites are here. I'm really surprised actually that the Grey Company have not been revealed as of yet, as the miners from Khazad-dûm march into position. Lothlorien certainly not taking the bait and shooting into these low tier trash units. I mean, it's maybe worth their while to go after the Barrow Whites. There are the Grey Company. And will the Arthane player... I mean, the Arthane player really has no excuse to not notice this, because none of his other units are engaged, and he is going to be able to get the Grey Company out of there. We'll see what they can do later on in the battle. But still, all quiet on this front so far, as the Dwarves once again retreat to a narrower section of the field, which they certainly should. But yeah, these wargs, initially they weren't used too well, but now they've started to pull it back a little bit. The Highborns of Erebor trying to retreat. The halberds, the wargs want to be a little bit careful of the halberds, but you can see there the heavy goblin archers trying to shoot into them. There's the Isengard ballista, brutalising those halberds as well. Isengard leading the way with their warg riders, those Ironfoot warriors getting in the way a little bit. But at this point, a lot of the dwarven spears and polearms have been heavily damaged. Those Highborns of Erebor getting charged, but that's close to the Ironfoot axe throwers. The Blacklock Engineers, if they still have ammunition, should be firing. The Ironfoot crossbows are firing. That's enough to cause the warg riders to become shaken. They're also going to get caught on the halberds. That might be enough to break them. They stabilised a little bit when the crossbows stopped shooting them. Another Isengard ballista bolt there. A few more wargs falling by the wayside. Yeah, the dwarves definitely don't want to banzai across the field, Last Samurai style, because the archers are still here. The wargs will just pick them off on the approach because they simply don't have the spears or halberds to deal with that anymore. What's going on over here? There's still a hidden unit of Grey Company down here, and I don't know whether they're going to be revealed. I mean, it's a very risky proposition to keep them here, because if they get revealed later on when all of the red team's infantry is basically down in this basin, they're going to just be overwhelmed very, very quickly. Snaga archers just sort of inching their way forwards. They're going to get revealed here, surely. Surely they will. I mean, that might be a blessing in disguise for Arthedain if it does end up happening. It doesn't look like it, actually. Masters of Stealth. This is obviously going to be a lengthy, because obviously Umbar had to march quite a long way, and they're getting into position now, so it's going to be a puzzle for the red team to try and crack the defensive position of Lothlorien and Arthedain up here on the hill. Those Ethel Tirith are actually firing. The lowest tier of Lothlorien archer, but of course low tier Elven archers are still a real handful. What are they firing at? They're going after the Oh no, not the Abrazani. They're going after this unit of Corsair Fencers, which is a very good choice. When their hit points are expended, they are a very fragile unit indeed to Archer Fire, so the Atheltirith are being used wisely there. Oh, hello. I think the Grey Company must have been uncovered. Yeah, the Snaga must have got too close to them eventually, and this is going to cause the second unit of Grey Company to retreat up behind the Arthedain front line at the summit of that hill. Meanwhile, the Dwarven forces, which are most certainly heavily depleted at this point, but they've certainly taken their fair share, their pound of flesh from the Orcs, because what's left of the Misty Mountains and Isengard army is not significant. I mean, over here you can see that these units are just going to rout right off the battlefield. The low tier raiders, heavy goblin infantry just didn't have the stomach to fight the dwarves on that front line, especially not when they were being pounded by crossbow bolts, blacklock engineers, iron for axe throwers as well. There is that Isengard ballista crew, which... where has the ballista crew gone? They've dismounted. The wargs are coming forward again. And again, this assault really, I mean, if they're going to win this, Isengard of the Misty Mountains, they're going to need their wargs to do the business. But the problem is, the dwarves are not going to make that same mistake twice. They're not going to charge across the open field with the wargs right here. Are they out of ammunition? The Uruk-hai archers have pulled out their Uruk-hai scimitars. It's also the Isengard ballista crew. The ballista must be out of ammunition if they've dismounted the crew and are going to use them as makeshift infantry, because ballista crew, as with all siege equipment other than the trolls, are just terrible. So now it's all down to whether Captain Gervais can engage in a smart fashion, because all of these out of ammunition skirmishers, Uruk-hai archers, Isengard ballista crew, garbage in melee. All of the danger from the Isengard force comes from the Champions of the White Hand and the Warg Riders rear charging their lines. So if they can keep the appropriate units, and by appropriate units I mean this unit of halberds guarding their rear, and the dwarves keep a tight formation, they're going to be just fine. Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin, Erebor Legionaries just going to butcher Uruk-hai archers all day long. Blacklock Engineers getting a few pot shots there on the Warg Riders. Yeah, very cat and mouse over on this side of things now, because neither one of these two teams essentially can afford to charge forward and engage, because the first one that does loses the fight. If the dwarves charge forward, the Champions of the White Hand rear charge them into oblivion. If Isengard and what's left of the Misty Mountains charge forward, then they just grind themselves up on the dwarven infantry. And that'll be a good victory for Erebor, because then they will have essentially beaten two of the armies. They would have certainly done their fair share of the work in this battle. But I think what the dwarves are trying to do is sort of coax Isengard into actually attacking them. So they're going to try and take up a position on this hill once again. The same front line has been used for the vast majority of this fight. Keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, the Atheltirith still firing. They still have their bows out. There's the Merc Cavalry. I'm not really sure that the Dwarven Cavalry is going to be much use against Lothlorien and Arthedain. There's a real case for saying that it maybe should have been committed against Erebor. Yeah, the Crossbow Corsair is another very, very good choice of target from Newbie 1, as he uses Atheltirith to kill off several of them. Definitely going after the right things here with his archers, poking and prodding mostly the Umbar forces, although there are a few dead Dwarven miners down there as well. Not going after Angmar so far, but most of their army is very heavy on the hit points and heavy on the armour and shields. Merc Cavalry is going to move up now, but what is this? Oh dear, this is a horrific mistake here from Tangerine if this holds true, because this catapult is going to get charged down by the Merc Cavalry. Now, admittedly, the Merc Cavalry is not the finest at killing off units off the charge, but it's only a catapult crew. Now, this could be what on earth was he thinking, putting it down here without support? That's a terrible mistake. Even someone who's never played Total War before shouldn't make that mistake. I mean, charging in here are the Grey Company, but that's not a good move either, because this is exactly the sort of engagement the Merc Cavalry want. Being in melee with a lightly armoured horse archer, it's exactly the sort of thing a basic unit of melee cav is going to want. And if you can't save the catapult, you at least want to save your Grey Company. That's a unit of body-piercing archers you've got there. I mean, he's doing the right thing now, sending down a unit of Evendim spearmen to cover the retreat. Because if you lose a single unit of Abendym Spears, that's not the end of the world, and they will be able to repulse the Merc Cavalry. And the Snaga Archers are not really going to be able to do a ton of damage to them. Here they come. Going to be able to catch the Merc Cavalry, and the Merc Cavalry's got really poor morale, so this might be enough to send them breaking even against a unit of Militia Spears. But I think over here, yeah, we're seeing the engagement now, the final engagement between the Dwarves and the Orc armies over on this side. Uruk-hai Archer's victory seems certain, purely because, I think, of the numbers differential. I'm not really sure what the axe throwers were doing trying to target down the infantry. They should absolutely be trying to finish off what's left of the warg. So it looks like they've already taken a bit of damage. The Ironfoot Halberds charging after them, going to kill off a few more of them. The Isengard wargs not really able to get into a position to get a nice beefy charge off on the Dwarven infantry, I don't think. And ultimately, that's what's going to make the difference here, because these Uruk-hai Archers are just not going to have what it takes to stand up to the Erebor elites. Not a chance. And you can see now sections are breaking off the Isengard Ballista crew. It's going to be a very, very depleted Dwarven army, of course. They're not really going to have much to say about the late game, but they've done their job. They've stood and fought. The champions, the White Hand, are trying to get a charge off, but they're not really having too much success. And they're just walking into this engagement, and if they get bound up in a fight with the Dragon Slayers, yeah, you can see only 3 of them left. They're shaken. Going to be a relatively simple victory. The Merc Cavalry getting out of there. This unit of Abendym Spearmen is charging down the mountainside on their own, actually catching some of the Merc Crossbows as well. But this unit of Abendym Spears is essentially being used as a cover-up for the previous mistakes. The catapult has now been saved. So Tangerine can count himself a very, very lucky boy that he was able to do that. If the Umbar player was willing to use the Númenórean Lancers to chase that down, he probably wouldn't have been so lucky. As it was, however, the Merc Cavalry, the Merc Crossbows, this unit of Abendym Spears, once again just sending down this unit essentially to die. Defeat seems certain. The Dwarven Miners are going to come down here as well. So this will be they'll be able to bleed some manpower from the defenders. Abendym Spearmen are pretty good as far as Militia Spears go as well. The teardrop shields with the Arnorian emblem on it. Although I'm not really sure what the Dwarves of Khazad-dûm are doing here. The mercenary crossbows are trying to charge through the Abendym Spears, which this is going to kill off a huge amount of them. The Merc crossbows are one of the most fragile units of cavalry you can hope to field, and they would have been, yeah, I'm not really sure what that was all about. They would have been super useful later on. The fact that they're mounted doesn't really mean a great deal. If all of the defensive archers are out of ammunition, you could just put them into place. And they are no less potent than normal crossbows, but yeah, real waste there, because the Abendym Spears were just going to be crushed underfoot. So again, Tangerine can count himself quite lucky that he was able to get more value out of these Abendym Spears. They might even be able to escape, which would be miraculous. Tangerine has certainly not been punished for his mistakes in this battle. Meanwhile, Captain Gervais has, you know, he's been victorious over here. The champions, the White Hand, I think they're still being targeted by the Ironfoot crossbows. As soon as they're dealt with, I imagine then it's just going to be the Dwarves trying to charge forward and closing the distance to the Misty Mountain skirmishers, or what's left of them anyway. Still only 2 crossbowmen against only 2 champions of the White Hand. And this is the difference that a good amount of coordination can make. If Isengard and the Misty Mountains had been more organised, if their wargs had been used better, if the Misty Mountains had chosen their engagements a little bit more wisely instead of blobbing up so the Black Blocks could just tee off on them, this engagement could have gone very differently. It would have been very difficult for the Dwarves to deal with. But as it is, Erebor have managed to deal with it. In spite of their own mistakes as well, like charging across the field while the wargs were still very much active and very strong was a bit of a mistake, but they were still able to weather that storm. While back over on the other side of things, the Merc crossbows are moving forward. The Abendym Spearmen are going to turn around, perhaps? I mean, there's no real need for them to turn around. Well, I mean, they are crossbows, so they would probably try and kill off these banks of pikemen, which actually don't have the support of any spears. There should be plenty of Abendym Spears ready to help reinforce them. There's Abendym Archers over here, who are in range of the crossbows, so yeah, these crossbows are not long for this world. They're very poor at absorbing arrow fire. I mean, to be fair, most of these arrows are missing because they are low accuracy, low quality militia archers that are shooting them, but all it'll take is one decent volley to connect with a few of them, and that should be enough to... Yeah, they're all gonna die off. A sad day for the crossbows. There are the barrow wights as well, so... Well, the goblin trackers are actually engaging as well. That's a very strange choice, goblin trackers. I don't know whether they're out of ammunition or what, but very easy task for the Lothlorien heavy spears there to just easily deal with goblin trackers in melee. Certainly not the strongest foe they are going to have to fight today. Lothlorien blades also waiting in reserve. The Ethel Tirith are firing at... it's not really worth their while firing at the goblin trackers. Newbie 1 has up to now chosen his targets very, very well. The Sylvan Rangers are also here. I mean, he's very lucky actually that they're not hiding, so they could be targeted by any of the attacking archers, which would be a very, very good use of their time. Sylvan Rangers are absolutely the sort of thing which could wreak havoc on the attacks as they try and make their way up the mountain. Over here, meanwhile, I think the dwarves are quite content to just sort of try and absorb this arrow fire. Still a few crossbowmen left alive. Only a couple of them still have ammunition though. Still utilising those fire arrows, but you can see again, very low quality goblin archers. Not a lot of accuracy from them. But only 2 ironfoot crossbows are going to take all day to poke their way through the heavy goblin archers. So a lull in proceedings over here as well, as the dwarves know what they're doing. I mean, he knows that if he can be patient, he's going to win this, because the heavy goblin archers are simply not going to have the ammunition to kill off as many of these infantrymen as needed, because the heavy goblin archers are terrible in melee. The dwarves still have some very nice elites to their name as well. Snaga archers are routing, as once again this unit of Evendim spearmen, which is being used as a counter-attacking tool, sends the Snaga archers running for the hills. They did actually return, which is a bit of good luck for Yo Ranger. Dwarven miners moving forward again. There needs to be a little bit more of a genuine effort from the attackers here. If they just keep committing individual units slowly and surely, which based on the amount of frames left in this battle is something which I'm sure they're going to do, not really going to work out too well for them, because especially Lothlorien, but Arthedain as well, they're going to be able to deal with individual units like that very, very easily, and you're not really going to gain a great deal from doing it. It's all well and good using fodder for their intended purpose of dying for the cause, but it needs to be an aid of something. If you just send forward fodder into a front line and they just get destroyed, you haven't really gained anything. You won't have killed off a lot at all. Then again, these are lower tier from Khazad-dûm, so the Dwarven miners might be able to do a little something, especially with the support of some 4th Legion Shield Guard. Those Evendim Spearmen are going to retreat to the relative safety of this front line as the Arthedain catapult starts to open up. And that was a good shot. I was about to say that they're missing, but they did actually manage to get a direct hit there on the 4th Legion Shield Guard, which would certainly have been the anchor for this assault. There must be a few units that got left behind from that Evendim Spear unit. Crispy. Again, shooting into those Dwarven miners. Again, I would say that maybe the catapult doesn't need to shoot into these Dwarven miners. I mean, at the very least they are getting kills, and with how closely packed those 4th Legion Shield Guard are, might not be the worst use of its time. You have to imagine that eventually there's going to be a big old blob fight over here, and if the barrow wights are involved, the catapult would be just the thing to deal with them. This might very well sort of hurry the red team up a little bit with regards to what they're going to do. I mean, the barrow wights are on their way up, so maybe the catapult wants to target them. And these goblin trackers did not enjoy their time in melee with the Lothlorien elites, to be sure. Heading over to this side. Still the heavy goblin archers shooting. Still utilising their fire ammunition, I'm sure. They're behind that terrain. So you can see that one of them did manage to actually hit, but it didn't kill the units, which is the problem. They don't have a good shot at all. I'm not sure whether the Misty Mountains player just didn't see that from like his position, presumably above the field, but you can see here that the dwarves using the terrain to their advantage. Almost all of the ammunition from these heavy goblin archers going into the hill. He's leaving one of these units just out in front so that the goblins do have something to aim at, but they're so depleted that it's a very difficult target. It's only 2 men to hit. I mean, would you be able to hit a target this size from that far away if you were a poorly trained goblin armed with a very poor quality bow? Probably not. And they are getting some hits, but it's not enough to kill these sturdy dwarves off. Meanwhile, we do have a melee engagement over here now, so the dwarves have engaged with the Arthedain front line, a combination, the classic combination of Arthedain pikemen and Evendim spearmen. Very, very cost-effective front line this under most circumstances, unless there's something of genuine quality going up against it. It'll be able to hold it in place for quite some time, and that is going to be the case here, especially with the Evendim archers firing fire arrows into the flank of the Dwarven miners. That should be enough to break them off, actually. Dwarven morale is pretty decent, all things considered. But in this sort of situation where the engagement is going against them and they're being shot by fire arrows, I can't imagine they're going to last too much longer. The Barrow Wights are down there and they are menacingly making their way towards the front line, and that is the sort of unit that will be able to worry this Arthedain front line. Evendim Spearmen and Arthedain Pikemen don't do a lot of damage, and the Barrow Wights can take a huge amount of punishment. But the Catapult might be just the ticket for dealing with that. We'll see. Yeah, this Arthedain front line is going to hold up very, very nicely. Having a little look back here, they also have the Merc War Chiefs ready to move in. You don't see the Mercenary War Chiefs for Arthedain all that much, mainly because the Fornoster Rain Knights are a little bit more expensive, but they're certainly worth it with the better stats, better armour, better morale. But even so, the Merc War Chiefs, as heavy swordsmen, will still be able to get in here, add a little bit more skill to the front line if needed, which might be needed if the Barrow Wights come forward, but that's where the low morale of mercenaries will come into play as well. The Barrow Wights do cause fear in the enemies they're facing. Here comes another unit of 4th Legion Shield Guard, in a little bit better condition than the other one that managed to get through. Some of them actually have managed to push their way through the formation, although they're already wavering. I can't imagine they're going to do much of anything back here. But a second unit of 4th Legion coming forward. Yeah, and here we go. The Catapult doing exactly the right thing, targeting the Barrow Wights as they're clumped together. They need to hope that they do manage to land some pretty decent shots as the huge barrage from the Evendim Archers continues to fire, and that's going to be a rout from the Evendim Spearman. So actually doing more damage perhaps to their own morale than the enemy morale with those fire arrows. The Catapult. A decent hit there on the Barrow Wights. They need to keep that up because the Catapult is definitely their best means to damage the Barrow Wights with. You can see how inaccurate really the Evendim Archers are as they spray all over the place. The Evendim Spearmen routing off. But the rest of the Arthedain Pikemen managing to hold the dwarves in place. Oh yes, a very, very nice volley indeed. And this is where the main weakness of the Barrow Wights in 0.96.1 is revealing itself, how slow they are. They're not able to move quickly, especially up a hill like this. And the Catapult is going to have plenty of time to get at least one more volley off on them. Admittedly, with a Barrow Wight unit with over 150 men in it is probably still going to be a serious problem for these Arthedain Pikemen. And you can see over here, in this part of the line as well, these 4th Legion Shield Guard getting into the rear of these pikemen, and pikes are very, very bad when... If pikes are not being engaged from the front with their pikes down in phalanx formation, their low stats can really, really hurt them. It's here where I'd say the Arthedain player needs to reinforce this front line a little bit. The Arthedain player has been allowed to get away with a lot of errors so far by the attackers, I must say. But if this continues, they should be in a pretty good place. Only half the enemy force remains, so that must be one of these armies. You can see some Sons of the Fallen are moving forward, and Mithril Guard, so yeah, the dwarves are very eager on busting through this Arthedain front line at this point, which I can see why. Doesn't look like the Arthedain player is too eager to reinforce. They're going after the Sons of the Fallen, but they're in such loose formation they're not going to get a huge amount of kills even if they do hit. And here come the Barrow Wights, the Forces of Darkness descending on these brave pikemen. And I can't imagine this Arthedain front line is going to last too much longer without help. They need the Mercenary War Chiefs down here badly. Those 4th Legion Shield Guard also attacking the rear of this section of the front line as well. Probably going to be enough to kill off the 4th Legion Shield Guard for now, but with the application of the Barrow Wights as well, it's going to be very, very dodgy, I think. Again, these Catapults are going to get hits, but it's not going to be on anything too substantial, I don't think. Sons of the Fallen, Mithril Guard, Guards of Khazad-dûm. A lot of fire arrows being loosed as well, but a lot of it's Dwarven units and Barrow Wights, so not a lot of kills going to be achieved by doing that. Well, Dwarves sort of repositioning themselves over here. The heavy Goblins sort of just waiting there. Champions of the White Hand, biding their time, although at this point, Champions of the White Hand, they're Their time to be effective is over. As soon as they charge into the Dragon Slayers or the Halberds, they're going to die very, very quickly. Although maybe they will nonetheless. They come forward with those nasty sort of two-handed variants of the Isengard sword. It's more of an axe than anything else, really, or maybe even a warhammer, you could say it is, with those very interesting sort of weapon. Champions' White Hand are just going to retreat backwards. Heavy Goblin archers are there. Let's see what's happening on the Lothlorien front. Well, Casimir's Legion threatening to come forward. Maybe Umbar are the ones that will come forward and try and challenge Lothlorien, but Lothlorien definitely the ones which have seen the least action so far. The attackers very reluctant to charge into the fangs of this very elite Elven front line, doubtless. But there, you can see here the danger of leaving your front line undermanned, because those pikes, their resistance and their will to fight was just crushed by a combination of those very elite Dwarven infantrymen and the Barrow Wights causing fear, the Blackwatch Legion moving forward, so a combination out of Angmar and Khazad-dûm, two of the most devastating forces. When they get rolling, they're very difficult to stop, and the momentum is certainly with the attackers on this front line now. The catapult firing, getting nice hits. I mean, this is where Arthedain can do a decent amount of damage with the 2 units of Grey Company. With that catapult, they could do a lot of damage, but it all really depends upon these Merc Warchiefs holding the line, and you can see already their morale is faltering. They haven't been in melee very long, but the Dwarven elites, the Barrow Wights are still here, albeit, well, there's still 163 of them, so they're still in good enough condition. The Blackwatch Legion are moving forward, so they're going to be able to push their way through a single unit of Merc Warchiefs pretty easily, I would say. So yeah, I think the Arthedain player is finally being punished for his mistakes so far. He hasn't really played a particularly good game, I don't think, the Arthedain player here. And finally the attackers are being much more aggressive, and perhaps punishing him for that. Not to say that he hasn't gotten damage done on both the Angmar and Dwarven attackers, but not enough to really justify this. The Arthedain pikemen have returned from routing. The catapult is not going to be able to escape, I don't think. The Avendim archers are going to try and block the Blackwatch Legion from doing so, and the Blackwatch Legion are not pointing at the Grey Company, so their shields will not help them against the Grey Company's arrows, but there you can see the downside of bringing Mercs. If that were dismounted Fawn Osterrain Knights, they would have held for a little bit longer at least. They still would have routed ultimately. Like, this is an overwhelming force that they're trying to hold in place, but they still would have been better nonetheless than the Mercenary Warchiefs. Worth the extra money, in my opinion. If you're a faction like Cardland that doesn't have any other options for that, then yeah, you need to bring the Merc Warchiefs, but Arthedain do have a better option than that. The Grey Company trying to get a rear charge, but of course, Horse Archers, only a charge bonus of 1. And now the continuing assault here, as the Blackwatch Legion push their way into the Avendim Archers, and Avendim Archers, of course, Militia Archers, they're out of ammunition. Not particularly great in melee. Doing their best, but ultimately it's not going to be enough. You can see there in the background as well, the Galathran nobles getting into position. Potentially going to try and shoot into these forces as well. Merc Cavalry moving forward as the Grey Company once again tries to get a charge in there, but they need to cycle out quickly, because with Sons of the Fallen here, the Grey Company are going to fall away very, very quickly indeed. There they go, they're going to get out of there now. All of the Arthedain forces which did rout and returned are going to come back to try and engage. I assume the Grey Company must be out of ammunition at this point if they're just cycle charging like this, which if they are, then fair enough, this is the best use for them, but they're not going to get a huge amount of kills. It's not going to be enough to stop the momentum that the attacks have going. 2nd Legion Axguard Umbar are also sending their Numenorian Lancers up here, which are going to be more than enough to deal with a depleted unit of Grey Company in melee. They need to steer clear of the Arthedain pikemen, however. This is the Umbar general. If he gets skewered by a pike, it's not going to be great for Umbar. I mean, to be fair, Arthedain have managed to sort of bottle up this attack into going only up here, whereas, you know, the attackers could be doing a little bit better of a job of spreading out and quickly breaking these Avendim archers. Maitha Ilazgalan are firing their javelins into this blob, which this is a good opportunity for the Maitha Ilazgalan. You can see that they are getting some nice kills on the Sons of the Fallen there. Galathran nobles also shooting away. What's going on further down the hill? It does look as though I mean, a huge portion of the attacking army is moving up here. Casimir's Legion are moving forward now, as though they've already engaged once and were sent packing very, very quickly. But yeah, the Casimir's Legion, as much as I will sing the praises of the Casimir's Legion, they are not going to be able to get through a joint front line of Lothlorien spears and blades. It's just not going to happen. The Elven superiority will be demonstrated here, certainly. Those heavy scimitars, they'll be able to kill off a few of the Lothlorien spears, especially with that malice, but it's, considering the depleted nature of them, it's not going to be enough. You can actually see that a lot of the forces have been committed up to the engagement at the top of the hill. So the attackers certainly putting all their eggs in one basket, really, but considering how the Arthedain front line was laid out, I feel as though it was a worthwhile endeavour to do this, even if the Maith Ilaz Gallen and the Galathrim nobles are going to be able to continue to get some decent kills as the attackers push forward. And to give the Emendim archers some credit, they have held the line. Like, they have stood and fought for longer even than the pikemen were able to. Meanwhile, see down here the dwarves finally finishing off the champions of the White Hand, and I think the goblins have just been circumvented, so what little is left of the Erebor army is going to be able to make its way over to try and support its allies, which it should be able to do. I mean, these are not insignificant units. A pretty healthy unit of Dragon Slayers of Eric Mithrin could be the difference between victory and defeat in the late game. We shall see. Well, there's still some Grey Company left alive. They're very, very depleted at this point, of course, and the longer that they stay in close quarters combat with this heavy Dwarven infantry, the more of them are going to die off. And I think at this point, yeah, you can see the Emendim archers are starting to break, but they did hold the line for a decent amount of time and allowed the Elven skirmishers, the archers and the javelins to get a few more kills than they otherwise would. But the Galathrim nobles should definitely start thinking about falling back at this point. If they lose the Galathrim nobles for no good reason, because they didn't pull them back quickly enough, that would be a disaster. Meanwhile, here are the Numenorean Lancers. Another poor, poor choice from the Arthedain player. Leaving the Dunedain Rangers out here when there's cavalry nearby. The Numenorean Lancers are just going to be able to cycle charge in here and deal with them very, very easily. Merc cavalry charging in here as well. You really, really want the Dunedain Rangers in a good defensive position. We've seen how devastating the Rangers can be. I don't like sort of criticising a single player in a lobby too much, because I always feel like a bit of a dick for doing so, but the Arthedain player has not had a good game at all. The way that they've laid out their defence, the units that they've left behind, and I've noticed they've also got units of Evendim Spearmen in reserve. I mean, they're saving Evendim Spearmen, but they're throwing Dunedain Rangers under the bus. Like, I don't see the logic here. I really don't. Meanwhile, continuing the momentum here, pushing forwards. Angmar, the Guardians of Khan Doom on the front line, joining the Blackwatch Legion. The red eye emblems on the rusted shields of the Guardians of Khan Doom, getting ready to move forward. Perhaps with a bit of assistance from Lothlorien, they can hold this line. I mean, I think it's up to... A bit of this is on his teammates as well. I mean, as a team, you can coordinate in the battle, and you can tell your teammates to do things, certain things, or not to do certain things, so... It's not as if Lothlorien have had much to do in this battle so far. So Newbie 1 could definitely have at least given Tangerine a little bit of assistance with regards to his decision making. This unit of Casimir's Legion doing its best, but ultimately on its own it's just going to end up falling by the wayside in the face of this much superior Lothlorien force. And over here... Is this the Isengard General? I think it is. Isengard General's still alive, but this should be the end of it. No, it's still going to be able to escape. As this Erebor force continues to try and hunt down what's left of the Isengard army that tormented it earlier on. Not sure where Erebor are really going to. I mean, they don't really need to fear this single champion of the White Hand. They might as well just try and blob it with their infantry. Unit of Abrazanim Narduzagar coming forward, but if their goal is to reinforce this unit of Casimir's Legion, I would hazard a guess for saying that the Casimir's Legion will probably be dead by the time they get there. And the Abrazanim Narduzagar will then suffer a very similar fate. Meanwhile, forming up on this side, I mean, it's not as if this was an assault which was without cost for the attackers, but they still have some very nice looking units here. Angmar and Khazad-dûm, combination of two of the most aggressive armies that there are. Right, Come on, let's... Oh, I was just about to go over there as well. But finally, at the hands of the Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin in their black armour, the Isengard general finally falls. And Erebor will be shifting their reinforcements over to try and help out their allies on the other mountaintop, I would imagine. Unless their goal is to just sort of bunker up here, throw their allies under the bus, and then just sort of hope that there's so little left at the end that they can pull out the victory. Bold move, if that is the case. Barrow Wights are moving into position. Yeah, they're just sort of... I think they're going to use the Barrow Wights as the front line, which is definitely the smart thing to do here. The ultimate melee tar pit. There's some very depleted Avrazani Narduzagar. Some Barrow Wights sort of shambling their way into position as well, but I mean, this is the only engagement that's happening so far, the only active engagement, and I mean, the Lothlorien units are going to very easily be able to hold, I feel like. I mean, the Avrazani have got some good skill. They will, of course, be Axemen in the upcoming 0.97 patch, but for now, heavy swordsman, bit of extra skill, a little bit better suited to fighting the elves, but even so, they're just not in enough numbers, and individually the elves can still better them here, especially with the support of those Lothlorien blades in behind the spear wall. Yeah, victory seems certain. And they have readily available reinforcements as well, some Lothlorien archers, which they've got their blades out. Of course, heavy elven archers, still very effective in melee. Can't just send any old garbage at them and expect to be victorious. What is this? Some rousing pikes. The annoying lance is still over there. Having a look at this. Yeah, it looks as though this is what the dwarves are doing. They're just going to sort of camp out over here, which is a little bit puzzling. I'd have thought that sort of moving to the aid of their ally, particularly seeing as there isn't really a huge amount of resistance down here. I mean, still enough maybe to defeat Erebor, but they can certainly do a lot of damage. Speaking of which, where be the witches? Are they up here? You don't really want to lose track of the witches if you can help it during a battle. The Barrow Wights are still going to make their way slowly and surely towards another Arthedain phalanx, Avendim Spearmen. These pikemen actually do have the armour upgrade as well, so they've got their breastplates. A little bit tankier, but against a unit like the Barrow Wights and 2 Guardians of Kharndoon, that's not going to matter too much. The unit of Dunedain Peacekeepers coming forward to help hold the front line, which will make a bit of a difference. Them in shield wall. The support of the Galathrim nobles will certainly not go amiss either. Meanwhile, most of the one player is admitted defeat. I'd imagine that's the Isengard player, seeing as he doesn't really have an army left anymore. But the Avrazani Narduzagar, now most of them are on the front line, but the Lothlorien infantry still just slowly but surely grinding down the Umbar forces. Umbar, of course, very strong infantry-wise, but the quality is just not with them here. Having a look back here, what have we got? Some Sylvan Rangers. Good to see at least the defenders do still have some Rangers, after those Dunedain Rangers were wasted. Blades. There are some Lothlorien warriors back here as well, so they do have that rather unique unit that Lothlorien have in comparison to the other elves, a 2-handed axeman. A skillful AP unit. Bit of a rarity. Some Dunedain Peacekeepers at the top here. And there's still some Arthedain units, Arthedain pikemen in conjunction with the Karas Gladhon's Guardians, and some dismounted Knights of Illuminus. The Wardens of the North are also here, which this is a good thing to see. Some AP archers, and also when they pull out their longswords in melee, they're pretty effective as well. As we arrive just in time to see the front line. I mean, we're just past the halfway point. The blue team are ahead by 20%, which is a significant gap. We'll see. I mean, the attackers still have the witches after all, and they can turn this battle on its head very, very quickly. Defeat seems certain for this front line, which is surprising. I mean, the Barrow Wights should be enough to dance around. There's Mithril Guard in there as well. Guardians of Kharndoon are a quality unit. The Barrow Wights are going a little bit crazy, as they often do when they're in a big old choke point fight like this. Yeah, very, very spiky front line indeed. 2 units of spears, 1 unit of upgraded pikes. There's also the Hobbit Slingers just in behind, who are going to be throwing their pebbles. Very depleted Dwarven units also moving forward, colliding with this Arthedain front line. There go the pebbles, doing their best. Over a long period of time, they can do a decent amount of damage. And Arthedain actually keen to reinforce this front line, much more proactive in reinforcing this, which I approve of. Dismounted Knights of Illuminus coming forward, which will be a significant anchor to this line. Multiple HP, obviously not as good as the Mithril Guard, but could still be enough with all of the support around them. Dunedain Peacekeepers, Arthedain Pikemen, the Evendim Spears. It's going to be a close fight, this. Good to see the Dismounted Knights of Illuminus coming forward. Legion Shield Guard getting pelted by the pebbles now. Barrow White starting to take a few losses, coming forward are the Snaga Archers. The Dwarves, I think, are actually trying to push their way through the front line, but they're not going to be able to do that, unfortunately. Arthedain have got enough men here, and that's probably going to result in more casualties than it is progress against the Arthedain front line. Down here, meanwhile, excuse me, a much more genuine assault. As the Barrow Whites, I mean, the Snaga Stalkers are obviously trash and they're going to be killed en masse by the Elves. But the Barrow Whites are going to be a much more difficult unit to get rid of. I mean, I think these Lothlorien Archers are going to try and shoot into the flanks of them. Or are they going after the Witchcraft Blackguard? What are they going after? Yeah, they're shooting the Witchcraft Blackguard, trying to kill off a few of those units. Witchcraft Blackguard, of course, one of the strongest sword and board units in the game, as it stands, and will continue to be so. The Witch King's finest. A little bit surprised actually that maybe they're not sending more reinforcements up here. I mean, Guardians of Kharn with Barrow Whites on the front line, they could apply a lot of pressure, because you can see that these Elves have already seen battle against Umbar forces, maybe a little bit battered and bruised, and now they're having to fight Barrow Whites, which it's going to take the Barrow Whites a long time to do damage here, but they will manage it. Maybe some more reinforcements from the Elves are needed, or some ranged support even. Those Sylvan Rangers are still there, although they maybe don't have the best of shots. They could end up getting a bit of friendly fire even, so perhaps that does make a certain amount of sense. Meanwhile, a very evenly matched front line up here, a tale of two choke points this battle at the moment, as the attackers try and make progress on at least one front. The Witchers are over here, and they immediately find themselves getting targeted. There's a unit of Sylvan Rangers up here as well, so that means there's two Sylvan Rangers, I believe. Are they still down there? Yes. 2 units of Sylvan Rangers. And the Galadhrim Nobles and the Sylvan Rangers will be on the lookout for those Witchers. If they return, the Sylvan Rangers will be able to scythe their way through. You can certainly see the logic behind this. I mean, one volley from the Witchers here will be enough to devastate this Arthedain front line and give the attackers the way in they need as the Hobbit Slingers move themselves forward again. Probably going to continue to try and throw those pebbles. Victory is a distinct possibility indeed. Yeah, I mean, I think that the Arthedain front line should be able to hold. I mean, it's going to be... Both front lines are going to look very, very battered and bruised when all is said and done, but considering how the fight has gone so far, Arthedain can afford that far more than the attackers can. Here come the Guards of Khazad-dûm, which might be enough to tilt the fight in favour of the attackers. The Warns of the North getting into position, the Sylvan Rangers are there, but they don't really have the best of angles. The slope is certainly not helping them. The arrows don't really have the best line of sight. The slight incline is of course going to mean that the attackers tire a little bit more quickly than the defenders, but other than that it's not going to help them a great deal in this case. Positioning might be key. Meanwhile, Barrow White's going crazy again. And what have we got over here? Some Lothlorien Archers being committed to the front line to reinforce. As soon as Barrow Whites start taking casualties as well, like they have very low stats, they just have a lot of hit points. As soon as they start taking damage, it's going to be a bad time for them, and the Snaga Stalkers are obviously just no match for the Elves in melee at all. Looks like the Sylvan Rangers are also firing in over here. Or is that the Ethel Tirith? Nope, it is. It's the Sylvan Rangers, so they're going to be going after this. They're going to get a lot of kills. Whether killing Snaga is worth it, you can be the judge of that. But I think this is the engagement which is more key than anything else. Because the attackers, they are making progress. Slow but sure victory is now a distinct possibility. What's going on here? The Mithril Guard are actually cycling back out. Here come the Witchcraft Blackguard as well, so yeah, they're applying a lot of their elite units over here to try and crack through this front line. The Sylvan Rangers and the Warns of the North are undoubtedly going to be targeting down the Witchcraft Blackguard. From the front, multiple HP, good armour, good shields, but armour-piercing arrows. Could be just the ticket, although they're not actually firing. A decent amount of reinforcement back here that can be committed to melee. I mean, Hobbit Slingers will just get slaughtered, of course, but Warns of the North, Galadhrim Nobles, very, very powerful in melee as well as at range. Galadhrim Nobles a little bit more so in melee than the Warns of the North, but that AP Makes the Wardens of the North superior at range overall. IMO. Yeah, those pebbles. This damage could really be adding up. What are they firing at, I wonder? I mean, it's hard to see the pebble projectiles. I mean, I'd assume they're going after the Witcher and Blackguard because they've got a more clear shot on them. But you can definitely see the Arthlane front line is starting to struggle. The Guardians of Doom, the Guards of Khazad-dûm, and the Second Legion trying to just push their way through. I'm really surprised at this point that Erebor aren't moving forward to reinforce their allies. Because a rear charge here could be exactly what makes the difference. The Mithril Guard coming back in, the Witcher and Blackguard charging in. So yeah, this is going to be the end of this Arthlane front line. But I honestly think the defenders are going to go on to win this, just because there's so much that the attackers still have to force their way through, unless the Witchers can be used to devastating effect over here on the Karas Galadhon's Guardians and Arthlane Pikemen. I don't see how the attackers win this, personally. Because the quality is not with them. They're just not making enough progress, especially down here. I mean, Lothlorien's front line is held very, very firmly. It would be a different story if Erebor had perished on the other side and there were... I mean, imagine a battered Isengard and Misty Mountains army also joining in this assault. I mean, even if they were very depleted, it still would have been a lot more manpower. Potentially some elites as well, Blackback Berserkers, even some Nazkai. Could have really made the difference. As it is, though, Erebor were victorious on the other side of the battlefield, which has really put the onus on the attackers here to having to win. And so far, in spite of what I would note as pretty severe mistakes from Arthedain, both Arthedain and Lothlorien have held very firmly, so goes to show what I know.
Only half the enemy force remains.
This Elven frontline continues. I mean, you can see here the Snaga just dying en masse to the Elven front line. Now you can see the Guardians of Khazad-dûm have come forward. I'm a little bit surprised as well that the attackers, when they did come forward, that they didn't come forward in bigger quantities. Like, why weren't the Guardians of Khazad-dûm with the Snaga and the Barrow Wights from the start? I know that this would have made them a big target for the Sylvan Rangers over here, who are now out of ammunition, to be fair. But the result of not really committing a lot of strength all at once is that they haven't really made a lot of progress. Abruzani Narduzagar moving forward now. See here, Karas Galadhon's Guardians have actually been moved forwards. This could be it. This is the defining moment of the battle, I think. The Dunedain Trollslayers have come forward, the Lothlorien Blades. The defenders smelled weakness over here and decided to come over with all that they had, but now, the Witchers. They have the opportunity they needed. They're not being targeted by archers anymore. They could grill this front line, and here they come. And that is a lot of damage. It's a lot of damage to the pikes, a lot of damage to the Karas Galadhon's Guardians as well. Another volley coming in to the rear lines. Dunedain Trollslayers and Lothlorien Blades. They lost track of the Witchers for just a second, and now they're being made to pay for it. The Witchers are now just being rapidly targeted by the Elven archers, but the Witchers have done their job. They've done a huge amount of damage. Whether it's enough, I don't know. You can see how quickly the Witchers are just being targeted down by the arrows. The Sylvan Range is obviously body piercing, and the Wardens of the North armour piercing, so just ripping their way through the Witchers, but a lot of damage done there for Angmar. Very often you see the Witchers die before they can do anything, and that was a very, very good volley. That's exactly what the attackers needed, because they were not going to win this through sheer strength at arms alone. Especially not with these reinforcements. Karas Galadhon's Guardians moving forward. Dunedain Trollslayers with those javelins would have devastated the front line, in addition to being very effective in melee with those armour-piercing axes. Those dismounted Knights of Anunas have been in this engagement for a long time, and they're now surrounded, but they're still fighting on. Very, very impressive indeed. Hobbit Slingers still doing their bit. The Sylvan Rangers. Wardens of the North, I mean, there isn't much left in reserve at this point, I would imagine. Yeah, there's just the Arthedain Pikemen. There's still a few units left in reserve, to be fair, but... At this point... Well, there goes the Khazad-dûm General. I think he was killed by the pikes rather than that one Knight of Illuminas. Down here, meanwhile, Abruzani Narduzagar also being added to the front line now. A much more potent threat down here now, and actually Lothlorien looking like they're going to lose this engagement, so finally... Lothlorien being tested in a way that it looks like they're actually going to have to commit forward some more forces to the front line or pull back. They've got a lot of out of ammunition archers over here, but I don't know. I mean, the attackers starting to make some moves, starting to make some progress on both front lines at this point. But is it too little too late from the attackers, I wonder? Still 20k frames left in this. I imagine that there's going to be one section of the battle where there's going to be a lot of marching. Galathan nobles now moving forward, pulling out those blades. The golden armour. I'd say it's shining in the sun, but on a foggy day like this, perhaps not. The Witchcraft Blackguard's still very healthy, but not a lot else is. I mean, the Barrow Wights, they've been in melee for a long time, and a lot of them are still alive. As the Barrow Wights, as is often the case with the Barrow Wights. Not a lot of other units left alive, though. I think all of the Witches have been targeted down very, very quickly, since it was clear. But this is all that the attackers really have at this stage. There's a star down here. An attacking general? The Numenorean Lancers. Yeah, the Numenorean Lancers aren't going to come forward. There's pikes galore in this front line. They'd just be killed very quickly. Karas Galadhon's Guardians holding down the front line, and the Galathan nobles. So this is pretty much the strongest infantry line that Lothlorien can field. Karas Galadhon's Guardians, Lothlorien Blades, Galathan nobles. They're being supported by Dunedain Trollslayers and Hobbit Slingers. You can see there the Angmar general fighting with his men, with his big old club, one of the Witch King's faithful. But I can't imagine he's going to make much more progress. So even with that brutal volley from the Witches, it is looking more and more like the defenders are going to be able to hold down this front line. And they've still got Wardens of the North they can commit forward as well to melee if need be. And obviously in melee, no slouches either. Very much the Arthedain equivalent of the Galathan nobles. A little bit more range focus, however, with that AP. Lothlorien archers, not the best of angles, but they're still able to hit this blob, get a decent amount of damage done there. And all of these out of ammunition skirmishers have been committed forward now, but most of the heavy Lothlorien units over here have actually been defeated, so it's mostly just Sylvan Rangers and Ethel Tirith that are actually holding down the front line at this point. Those arrows just ballooning up into the air and falling down. There are Corsair fencers on the front line now also, so a much more genuine assault happening down here, and the attackers need to hope that this is going to be enough to give them some sort of hope in this battle. I say that Elven archers are, they're able to look after themselves in melee, but the Sylvan Rangers and the Ethel Tirith much less effective in melee than the heavy Lothlorien archers. And they're certainly going to be no match for this dedicated Angmar and Umbar infantry, which is crashing down upon them now without some more support. There's Maitha Ilaz Gellan trying to get into a position to use their javelins. Some crossbow Corsairs moving forward as well. I don't know whether they have a good shot either. I mean, we'll find out now, I suppose. Applying a lot of pressure to this front line. The javelins are able to get a decent amount of, well, a decent angle on the Barrow Wights at the very least, but they could find themselves being the target of the crossbow Corsairs firing into them. Some of those Barrow Wights going flying. Barrow Wights have very little mass, I think, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, they are essentially wraiths and ghosts, the undead. So of course, what are they going to fire at? The Lothlorien archers? Yep, they're going to go after the Lothlorien archers. A full volley, doing a lot of damage there, and you can see how devastating the crossbow Corsairs can be. Very much the definition of a glass cannon. A huge amount of damage they can do with their crossbow-launched harpoons. But they're also very, very vulnerable to arrow fire. They don't really wear armour as such. Some of that House Tully-styled fish-scale armour almost. Maitha Ilaz Gellan trying to get a little bit closer to the action. This Lothlorien line continues to try and hold, but struggling a little bit more so now. Let's have a look here. The Barrow Wights still fighting hard on the front line alongside what's left of the Guardians of Khan Doom and the Witchcraft Blackguard. I think the Sylvan Rangers are going to march over to the other side and try and help out there. The Hobbit Slingers still supporting. I mean, the Barrow Wights are going to fight for a while, which is probably what is inflating the frame count of this entire battle, to be frank. But ultimately, they're going to lose eventually. One of the things about the Barrow Wights is they can, as part of a combined arms front line, they are very, very effective, as they proved actually earlier on in this very choke point. But if they're sort of isolated and on their own, which more and more they're the last ones left standing, they don't have the damage numbers themselves to be brutally effective, especially not against Galathan nobles and Karas Galadhon's Guardians, like the finest that Lothlorien can bring to the field. That was a unit which has just revealed itself, which is another unit of fencers. But time is running out for the attackers. over here is their best bet for breaking through a front line. But actually there's another unit of Lothlorien Blades that's been committed forward, so if they're going to be victorious, it will be after a relatively long period of time once again. Holding down that front line. Naru Naaru Sentinels moving forward, so those Umbar Pikes. Lothlorien Archers, what have they got in reserve? The Warns of the North have cycled themselves over here as well. Going to be able to use those AP arrows potentially to shoot right into the heart of this offensive. That's going to again be brutal. Still some Sylvan Spears in reserve as well. As far as Lothlorien units go, they are the lowest, but still elves. Yeah, look over here. This is where the tide begins to turn. When I say begins to turn, this is where the fight ends, really. You can see there that the one Witch Realm Blackguard left alive is the general, and he is going to run for the hills. He's going to try and live to fight another day, even if his army is in ruins. Yeah, very, very, very bloody fight indeed up here. Dunedain Troll Slayers still watching and waiting. The Lothlorien Warriors, yeah, there's simply too much in reserve. The defenders, I feel fairly comfortable in backing the defenders. The Corsair Blackguards moving forward, some more fencers. Crossbow Corsairs taking more damage. The Sylvan Rangers are moving over here. The body piercing. Again, I'm really surprised that Erebor are not moving now, certainly, because them moving into position, pressuring the attackers from another angle. Maybe they feel like their job is done and they've got a well-earned rest coming their way. Sylvan Rangers are shooting the Blackguard, which is a good choice. Blackguards are not particularly good at dealing with arrow fire, and body piercing is obviously going to be that much more effective, as per usual. And of course, these are Elven Rangers as well, so they have the 6 missile damage rather than just the 5. And we know how devastating normal Rangers can be. Elven Rangers just have that little bit more, a little bit extra. Still a very bloody and gruesome front line. We're not going over here. Yeah, the Angmar General is going to be able to escape, but his Barrow Wights are not. The forces from Lothlorien simply too strong. I think now, actually, the Dwarves are thinking about moving. But Captain Gervais is kicking himself that he didn't move into position sooner. He didn't have faith in his allies. And in the end, both Arthedain and Lothlorien have managed to hold just as well as he did against the Isengard and Misty Mountains onslaught. Feels like a long time ago now. Still those Lothlorien forces, and you can see there the Sylvan Rangers cutting through that Umbar front line, doing a lot of damage. Not only to the Corsair Blackguards, but also to the Barrow Wights at this point. Bit of extra. And here are the Warns of the North with their mighty steel bows. For those of you that have been playing the mod ever since its first version was playable, you'll remember the Dunedain Steel Bowmen. Just to give you an idea of how ridiculous they were, they had armor-piercing arrows and they had 18 missile damage, which is a substantial amount more than any javelin in the modern version of the game has. And that's from an archer. They were absolutely brutal. I've never seen a unit in Medieval 2 be so ridiculous. Here are the Dunedain Troll Slayers moving forward, so the Barrow Wights are gone. Probably going to try and hunt down the Angmar General, who is just sort of contemplating things here on the battlefield. He's going to try and get away, although I don't really know to what end. He's going to need to engage himself at some point. Meanwhile, down here, this Lothlorien front line is, again, looking a little bit thin on the ground, but it's still holding, which is the main thing, and they're still taking damage from that arrow fire, armor piercing, body piercing, the works. And of course, both Lothlorien and Arthedain are going to have other forces coming down to engage these units eventually, not to mention Erebor and making their way over here now as well. Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin and whatever else is left from the Erebor army. Something else for the attackers to contend with. Maitha Ilaz Galan in position to throw some javies, or at least a couple of them are, against a few of the units that are sticking out. Dunedain Troll Slayers proving themselves to be much quicker. They're fresh, whereas the Witch Realm of Angmar's general is not fresh. He is exhausted. He's also got that heavy plate armor, And he trudges his way up the hill. Will he escape? Look at him, look. Dunedain Trollslayers are now in range. They're going to throw some javelins. Ooh, he's a lucky boy. All of those javelins whizzing past his head. If any one of those made contact, it would have been devastation, really. Here come the Merc Cavalry. They're not going to last too long, I don't think. I mean, they did charge in there and kill off a couple of the axe throwers. But the rest of the Dwarven force is on its way. There goes the Merc Cavalry. They did actually manage to kill off the axe throwers, and then they saw the rest of the angry dwarves coming towards them and routed off. Angmar's general dies. The Troll Slayers killing off, so Khazad-dûm are gone for all intents and purposes. The other armies are gone. I would imagine that there's going to be a period left at the end of the battle where they have to come and deal with these archers. It's possible the Misty Mountains player crashed, but if he did, like, this was never going to be enough to deal with the dwarves anyway, so it wouldn't have really affected the battle that much. Meanwhile, got some Sylvan Spears on the front line now, shoring things up. Depleted Lothlorien archers. Maetha Ilasgalan still loosing their javelins. Just shoring up the line more and more. The Naryn and Arnor Sentinels will hold for a decent amount of time. And the Dunedain Peacekeepers on their way over. See here that the Corsair Blackguards are going to try and get into position. I wonder if they should have ammunition. They're fully healthy, so they must be one that wasn't committed. But they need to be very, very careful because the dwarves are... They're going to engage them in melee if they're not careful. The Númenórean Lancers are here. Nope, they're going to be caught in melee. I mean, the Corsair Blackguards are not bad in melee, but they're certainly not the equal of the Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin. They're going to try and shoot their javelins point blank. I don't think they're going to be able to. They're going to have to pull out their dual scimitars. Erebor going to be able to pad their own kill count a little bit more on the Zumbarim. See some more of the Arthedain forces making their way down the hill, so at this point it's really just a matter of time. The attackers are not going to be able to win this fight. I think they know that as well. But they can try and make themselves look good on the post screen by giving themselves a few more kills, and Corsair Blackguards are exactly the sort of unit which can pad your kill count a little bit. Corsair Fencers finally going to be able to make it to the front line. Hobbit Slingers are now over here. Again, over the course of a long battle, if they're not engaged, they can do damage, and that's probably what has happened. Despite a rough start, Tangerine has managed to sort of lock things down a little bit more as the fight has gone on. Lothlorien warriors, Maetha Ilasgalan, another unit of Maetha Ilasgalan. Here come the fencers. The Barrow-wights are actually leaving the front line, which is a bit of a disaster, truth be told. Here comes the Númenórean Lancers trying to charge in, but halberds, very, very sturdy Dwarven infantry. Charging uphill as well, so a bit of the speed and sting is going to be taken out of it. Yeah. Dunedain Trollslayers are also in position now, so if that cavalry comes back for another charge. Some crossbow Corsairs going forward as well, so Umbar did have a few hidden units up their sleeve, which would have been really helpful if the fight was even as it had unfolded, but unfortunately for them, certainly not so. Defenders have done a very good job here overall. And the gap has closed significantly. It was 20%, it's now 12%. And the Númenórean Lancers get another charge. And there's Peacekeepers, I mean, to be fair, halberds, spears all over the place. Not going to be easy for Castamir and his riders. Over here, the Barrow-wights think they're going to re-engage with the front line, I'm not sure. Well, here are the Naryn and Arnor Sentinels. Victory still seems certain for them, amazingly enough, but here comes overwhelming force. Númenórean Lancers trying to get out of there. Crossbow Corsairs moving in. The Corsair Blackguards, what are they going to fire at, I wonder? Whatever comes closest to them, I would imagine. Well, it's a single Lothlorien bannerman, and he is... that's a bit of a waste, really, but I suppose if the Corsair Blackguards haven't used any of their ammunition yet, so they need to use it on something before they're engaged here. Here's Umbar reloading their crossbows, the Dwarven forces moving forwards. The Dwarves might be in a bit of trouble here as the crossbow Corsairs and the Corsair Blackguards pelt them with armour-piercing projectiles. A nice volley. Two nice volleys. Dunedain Peacekeepers move forward as well. Dunedain Trollslayers will be able to respond in kind. The Barrow Wights are marching back down the hill to try and deal with this. But ultimately, they're going to have to engage in melee at some point, and when they do, you would certainly give the advantage to the defenders. Although, to be fair, the Númenórean Lancers getting around the back, they're going to be able to charge into the Troll Slayers. A nice charge as well. Multiple HP though, so they will be able to withstand a bit of a beating. Corsair crossbow Corsairs trying to get away from there, as the Corsair Blackguards are being overwhelmed in melee by what's left of the Dwarven infantry, supported by those Dunedain as well. The Troll Slayers will be able to give as good as they get in melee as well with those axes, those Barrow Wights.
If we remain true and steadfast, victory will be ours.
This fight's still ongoing as well, but it's only a matter of time. And again, this is one of the problems with the Barrow Wights. They were trying to get down here to support, but they're so slow. There goes the Erebor Generals. Corsair Blackguards managing to shank him. King Dane fought long and hard in this battle, but ultimately overcome by the men from Umbar. Ironfoot Halberds trying to move over to kill off those Númenórean Lancers, but they're taking losses ultimately from the Dunedain Trollslayers as well. The Halberds managing to kill off a few more of them. More javelins being loosed. Dragon Slayers of Erebor Mithrin have taken a few losses. The Dunedain Peacekeepers hounding the crossbow Corsairs. And to be fair, this Umbar last stand has yielded some results, but it's ultimately going to be a useless gesture. A consolation at most. Halberds moving forwards. There are the Númenórean Lancers. They're going to charge in. They're not going to charge into the Dragon Slayers, maybe kill off a couple more of them, but when it comes to melee, you can see them getting chopped apart pretty quickly. Númenórean Lancers are not multiple HP. Those Barrow Wights, however, were managed to swallow the Dunedain Troll Slayers. There are the Warns of the North. This engagement up here is surely only a matter of time now. Yeah, this front line, with the support of those Arthedain units and Lothlorien reserves, this front line, it looked as though the attackers may have been able to do something. But ultimately, in the end, nope. Exhausted Barrow Wights, making them even slower than they normally are. Those Dunedain Trollslayers are actually still alive, managing to simply run away from the Barrow Wights, I suppose. Although their reward is simply to be skewered by another charge from the Númenórean Lancers. Here come the Warns of the North though, long swords drawn. This will surely be the end as well. Well, instead they will be able to get away for the time being. Those Barrow Wights just menacingly marching towards the Ironfoot Halberds as they continue to poke and prod at the Corsair Blackguard. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I feel as though when you reach this sort of position in a fight where you know you're not going to win, I do feel as though it is worth your while to just sort of charge in and get it over with, charge everything into melee. Because there's no chance, there's no way that you win this fight. But still, it is closer than it once was. 9% now. It may very well end up being within that that magical 10% differential when the fight concludes. Barrow Wight is still plugging away. The Dragon Slayers of Erebor Mithrin, however, mulching their way through the Corsair Blackguard. And these Dunedain Peacekeepers have actually been savaged as well, I would assume, from a combined effort from the crossbow fire and the charges from the cavalry. So again, Umbar just padding their kill count here in the late game, which is good for them. Yeah, you can see here now, this front line has collapsed really. The Hobbit Slingers just charging their way through it. Narrow Arrow Sentinels and what's left of the Blackguards and Fencers that were committed up here. Only a matter of time before they die. Warns of the North taking the Barrow Wights head on, and they're going to get reinforcements pretty soon anyway, so you know, they've got some Ironfoot Halberds helping them out also. Arthedain General Dragon Slayers of Erebor would actually be better off just trying to kill off the Umbar General, I think. Because they're not long for this world if the Crossbow Corsair is going to hold them. Once again, the Numenorean Lancers and Castamere riding down some hobbits. A fun pastime. Yeah, the ones of the north showing their quality in conjunction with the Dwarven elites and the halberds. Barrow-wights taking some damage there. It would be amusing if Castamere died to a stray pebble from the Hobbit Slingers, but I'm not so sure that that's going to happen. And wow, this front line over here, the Naryn and Aru Sentinels, I think they're locked morale because there's only one left and they're still fighting. He's still fighting on. But that is not going to be the case for too much longer. Fencer actually managed to outlast him. Yep, Cycle charging in and out. Castamere and his two mates. As the Hobbit Slingers continue to do the business. Does Crossbow Corsair still have ammunition? They do. Probably targeting down the Dragon Slayers of Erebor as well. A wise choice. I mean, the Barrow-wights are also taking losses now as well, so they've been in the fight long enough to the point where their hit points are probably gone. There goes Castamere, and he did die to the hobbits. Overwhelmed by the small men in the straw hats. Lothlorien warriors are going to come forward now as well. And back up to 2 speed, I think, as really it's only a matter of time before these Barrow-wights fall by the wayside. And then it's only going to be a matter of time before the heavy goblins are charged down across the map. This thing is reforming. You can see how quickly the Barrow-wights start to die off when their hit points are expended. That's really the only thing that's their entire purpose for being. They can absorb a lot of punishment, but when they reach their limit, they fall apart pretty quickly. Lothlorien warrior is going to charge forward, and this should be enough, you would imagine, to break the Crossbow Corsairs very, very quickly indeed. They do manage to get one final volley off and kill off a good amount of the elves. Yeah, there they go. Umbar are gone. The Barrow-wights are gone. And honestly, I think we'll skip ahead, I think, to the results screen, because it's going to take a while for the blue team to go and hunt down those heavy goblins. So, here we are at the results screen, and the dwarves getting the most kills, which I kind of expected, considering the fact they did take on 2 armies solo and won, and also got a few kills in the late game against Umbar. As for the attackers, Umbar getting the most, which again doesn't surprise me too much because in the late game they were able to sort of string the battle out a little bit more and sort of pad their own kill count a little bit. Khazad getting the least, you don't see that an awful lot, but then they were the tip of the spear, as it were, and had to charge up that hill against the Arthedain front line, and they took a lot of damage from the Arthedain and Lothlorien skirmishers. The Misty Mountains and Isengard, you know, they got around 2,000 kills between the two of them, and you know, that does constitute most of the Erebor army, so that does line up quite well. Angmar doing decently, and again the Witches probably helped pad their kill count a little bit more. But let's go and see what the Dwarven player did. The damage for the Dwarven player, a lot of kills obviously across most of their units, a lot of units breaking 200. The Ironfoot Crossbowmen getting 424, that's very, very impressive indeed. There they are, the Blackrock Engineers, 711, so obviously very, very effectively used right into those Isengard and Misty Mountains blob, and I do thoroughly believe that if not for the Dwarven crossbowmen over here really laying waste to the Misty Mountains and Isengard, this battle probably would have gone the other way, because the Misty Mountains and Isengard would have been victorious then, and then the red team would have had reinforcements with which to try and break the Arthedain and Lothlorien resolves, and I do feel as though the way the Arthedain player set up their front line would have been punished much more readily if the red team had more manpower. But then again, 5 versus 3, if you don't have enough manpower when you've got 5 armies on your side, then that's your problem. So yeah, the attackers made their own mistakes here, which in the end ended up costing them the battle. A lot of kills on the higher tier infantry as well for Erebor, of course. Some decent ones on some of the Ironfoot units as well, dealing with those lower tier Uruk-hai and Goblins, and then obviously getting a few more kills in the late game against the Corsair units. Yeah, big thank you to Captain Gervais for sending this one to me, because that was a very enjoyable fight indeed. I think that's probably the most enjoyable fight I've seen actually on the Mountain Pass, and I've seen quite a few at this point. So yeah, big thank you to him. And again, I'm still in the midst of my sort of university project at the moment, so I'm not really sure, can't really give a concrete schedule for when things are coming out and when things are not. But still, I do hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.